Good morning. I have the privilege of being the minister of Fairlawn Avenue United Church. My name is Cameron Watts. I identify as he, him, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today. I'm going to make you cast your minds back to the distant past, to maybe a day that you visited a place north of Toronto called Canada's Wonderland. And you might have deigned to walk in the gate and gone to the left and watched this ride and say, I want to do that. And you lined up and you got wrapped in a full body glove, and they hoisted you up to the top of an arch with a crane, and you knew they were going to drop you. And you knew that the cables would hold you. And just as you got to the top, if you opened your eyes, before you went flying like a pendulum, and by the way, it feels like you get to be Superman just for a moment, or Supergirl, or Superwoman, or, those flying people. You're up there and you open your eyes, and below, painted on the concrete far, far below you, is a Coca-Cola bottle. And underneath you it says, thirsty? Yes. How many times in our lives have we wondered what we got ourselves into and our mouths went dry? Jesus in the wilderness, certainly, as we remind ourselves at Lent. Or how about his disciples who later on would watch the crowd abandon them with every new saying of his because they didn't like it, until it was just a handful of them. And before they knew it, their mouths were completely dry while they watched him being led to Calvary. When we find ourselves unexpectedly in an unfriendly crowd, our mouths go dry. When we're up against more work than we bargained for, thirsty. Come to the waters. Stand by the Christ. No, you will not be denied. Be with the people of God who are ready to hand you a cup of refreshing cold water. Be of the people of God ready to hand someone else a cup of cool water. Welcome. Welcome to a place where we thirst for justice for our indigenous brethren who lived beside streams of living waters. Welcome to a place where we remember the water that we denied to our sisters of the Huron, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississauga, of the New Credit who took their name from the river where they dwelt. Take a moment of quiet right now and think of what it would be like to be moved away from that source of life that your family for generations had depended on. We acknowledge their place in our world, our community, and we commit ourselves to walking alongside the still waters of peace and belonging with these, our neighbors, in the name of Christ. When we are overwhelmed with the world and cannot see our way clear, when life seems a struggle between tedium and apathy, or frenzy and exhaustion, when today seems a punishment and tomorrow a torment, may we recognize courage in ourselves and our companions that is not dramatic, that elicits no fanfare, that commands little notice by the world, that is forgotten and taken for granted. like those who live one day of pain at a time, who see the long path of suffering and do not despair, who inspire us by their patient courage when we are impatient and afraid, and quietly celebrate your presence among us. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. You that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me. Eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen so that you may live. I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. See, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander to the peoples. See, you shall call nations that you do not know, and nations that do not know you shall run to you, because the Holy One of Israel has glorified you. Seek the Holy One while they may be found. Call upon them while they are near. Let the wicked forsake their way, and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them return to the Holy One for mercy, and to our Creator, who abundantly pardons. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Holy One. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. If you're in a desert, you need water, or at least need to be able to find it. But what if you don't believe that you can? What if you've decided there is no water available, everything's an oasis? Isaiah's words that we heard this morning are for people who are wandering through the desert and don't believe they're going to be able to find water. Everyone who thirsts, he says, come to the water. And they're, where? Where is it? It's nice that this is poetic, and it's nice that it is full of promise. It falls on deaf ears if you've been thirsty for a long time. But he is saying to them, there's a time in your journey home when you will find what you need. You're walking through the desert. Have some confidence, have some comfort. The Holy One who promised you that you would go home to Jerusalem will make sure you get there, and you will have what you need. The Holy One who promised to be with you in your journey in life will be with you and make sure that you get what you need, even if you're not sure. In all of the passage, there's only one statement that's indirectly judgmental. When the prophet asks, why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Why do you waste yourself on what you do not need? Well, we all know the discomfort of that question. But let me rephrase it as an invitation. How would you like to stop being distracted by what you think you need, simply by admitting what you really need? I'd kind of like that. I'd like to be distracted. No more. I'd like to be able to say, you know what? I don't need that. I need this. And I can stop worrying about that. Because of our focus these Sundays in 2025 off and on is mental health, today I'm going to focus on something at least a few of us need, and that is help. And to do that, I want to take you through a very brief journey through a graphic novel by the illustrator Debbie Tung. It's called Everything is Okay. And for her protagonist, a young woman in her late 20s, it's not. Everything is falling apart. She is lost and overwhelmed, and when anyone asks her, how are you doing? Her reply is, I'm fine. I'm okay. I am. It's what she tells her parents. It's what she tells her friends. It's what she tells her work colleagues. But she is full of an aching sadness that she cannot explain, not even to her significant other. When she has time to unwind, she reviews every significant decision she has ever made, trying to figure out what went wrong. She wishes she could care less about everything. Some days are good. Some are not. On those days, she tries to fake it until she makes it. And in the story, she is utterly exhausted. She feels guilty for not measuring up and disappointing everyone. If you have ever suffered from depression, you recognize this story. You hear her when she says, "What I did not realize about mental illness is if you hide something inside yourself for too long, you break." In part because she was self-aware, and in part because she had a significant other who just held her, was clear with her, and supported her. When she wondered if she should get help, they were able to say, "I think that's a good idea." And so she did. She was thirsty for understanding and meaning, thirsty for more than what had characterized almost all of her days: tears and helplessness. She saw a professional, and the professional walked with her on a journey of discovery, revealing to herself her deepest, darkest thoughts and emotions, helping her to have a different perspective, helping her to see that not everything she told herself was true, and that many things in her journey eroded her sense of worth, but did not take away her worth. The book is mostly painted, illustrated in monochrome, but there are occasional flashes of color. Like the declaration of the importance to pay attention to your own path, you don't need validation from anyone else. When you pay attention and you're able to articulate who you are, the validation is here. The book is not about simple solutions, and her path to wholeness is a path. There is no arrival. There is no eventual definition of, "I'm okay," beyond the claim at the beginning. That's as much of the book as I'm going to bring to you. I can tell you where to find it if you want to find it for yourself. But for a moment, I want us to come back to Jesus in the wilderness, because that's what Lent is about. Jesus who was alone, Jesus who chose to be alone some days. 40 days was a long time to not hear the clamoring voices of people so he could be clear about who he was. Days in solitude in the next 3 years were needed so he would not hear those clamoring voices of a demanding and often demeaning world. Some of us need a little quiet. Some of us need to be able to sit with someone who will help us understand ourselves. Most of us can be the one person who sits in silence with another, sits in silence with another, while they figure out their life and their needs. Jesus came out of the wilderness, and first thing he did was he chose a small group of friends to go with him. And we usually assume, when we read the Gospels, that he was relatively smart and compelling because he was connected to or aware of the transcendent reality of the Holy One, and that he chose those 12 so that he could be discipling them all the time and making them more aware of the realities of this world and the reality of the holy. And that would be right, but in some of the stories, he just needed some friends to sit with him in the quiet. The dedication at the beginning of Everything is Okay is this. This book is for anyone who is going through a tough time. You are not alone. You matter. You are enough, just as you are right now. You are enough, just as you are right now. Peace to you. And I invite you to offer peace to each other.
Unseen,
Some meals are complicated to prepare, some not so much. Some we put a lot of love and effort into. Some, because they're hastily pulled together, we do the best we can. And no matter how hard or how easy we make it for ourselves, the important thing we realize is that some people who are important to us got together and shared the meal. They will rave over the food if you spent hours working on it. They will say thank you if they knew you went to some trouble. They might even be grateful if when they arrived, the food was delivered at the same time. You invited them for a meal, and you got to share it with them. And they got to share it with you, and they were made welcome. It was history and practice and tradition at Passover for families and friends to gather, to share a meal of remembrance of the journey, the beginning of the journey to freedom. How the children of Israel were released from Egypt and started to walk through the desert to the promised land. But before they began the walk, they gathered together for a hasty meal because they had to get going. But they still gathered together. And the people who join us on our journeys, the ones that we sit down to eat with or either at a table or at TV trays or together in pews today, these are the ones we journey with. These are the ones who walk beside us. And these are the ones who understand that some of us are full of doubt, some of us are uncertain about the future, some of us are genuinely anxious. But in that moment, however long it is, we get to be with people who care about us and people who walk with us. And so we will share from a loaf and a cup that are about us together, the people who journey and the people who make sure that each one of us is nourished. Thirsty, hungry, you belong here. Come to the table knowing you belong and that there are people who take you just as you are, welcome you, are glad to sit down with you. This is the moment for you to ignore everyone who passes judgment on you because they don't understand you or they only claim to. Today, you are the same as you will be tomorrow and the same as you were yesterday. A created gift of God for yourself and for each other. So when you hear Jesus' words, hear that affirmation and hear the welcome and hear that you belong. Because it was with his family and his friends, his disciples, and the few hangers-on who were left, and the women who prepared the meal, that at the end of the Passover feast, he paused and he took a loaf of bread and he looked at all of them and gave thanks to God and broke the loaf and said, "This is me. This is my body, which is for you. When you eat it, remember." And after that, he took a cup. And he said, "This is the new covenant, the new way of life that is poured out for you through me. When you drink this, remember that. That which is broken and that which is poured out is for the sake of our understanding that we all are loved." I invite you just for a moment to quiet your hearts in prayer. For those of us who are uncertain, anxious, not sure we belong or where we belong, may your Spirit come to us in this moment and say to us, "You belong. You will be nourished for your journey." And look around you. I've given you these people to care for you. Amen. When we gather at the communion table, we take a few moments to offer the prayers that we have for each other, the people we're concerned about. And so I invite you to share their first names with me so we might pray for them together. All right, we'll pray together for these folks, and then I will invite you to join me in the Lord's Prayer that is printed in your bulletin. These are the ones who may be feeling like they are walking alone, and it is our desire, no matter how they walk, where they walk, or what journey they have to take, that we ask, O Spirit of God, would know that they are not alone. Perhaps even that they were named in this place today. But they would know that they are loved. And there are those of us who are concerned about them and who might even sit quietly with them, offering nothing but the grace of friendship. And yet in our hearts we may long to do more, and if there is, help us to know when to do something and when not to. To know when it's simply our presence that is valued, and to know when there is more we can do. Help us to be clear, because we want them to have a clear path ahead of them. Ease their anxiety, strengthen them, and by your Spirit reassure them that it isn't just we who are walking with them, but you are too. And so we pray for Carolyn, Donna, Helen, Beth, Elizabeth, Mary, Chris, Elaine, Andrea, Sheila, Scott, Bill, Valerie, and two names I did not do a good job of writing down, so my apologies, but for them as well, and Mac and Roland. Their names are written on our hearts well. And so we offer you all that we are and have for the sake of their healing and strength and peace. In the name of Christ. and in the name of Christ it is ours to offer this prayer together. O Birther, Father, Mother of the cosmos, focus your light within us. Make it useful. Create your reign of unity now. Through our fiery hearts and willing hands, help us love beyond our ideals and sprout acts of compassion for all creatures. Animate the earth within us. We then feel the wisdom underneath, supporting all. Untangle the knots within, so that we can mend our heart's simple ties to each other. Out of you, the astonishing fire, returning light and sound to the cosmos. Amen. I invite you to offer these words with me. We hunger, not just for spiritual food, but for that hope which strengthens us as your people. We thirst not just for spiritual refreshment, but for that grace which fills us so we can overflow in service. So pour out your Spirit upon the gifts of the bread and the cup, and on your children gathered here. We would not waste your gifts of grace and hope, but share them with those who hunger for them in their lives. We would not hoard your gifts of peace and justice, but use them to lift up all tossed aside by the world. Thank you for watching. If you appreciate this content, please share it with your friends. Consider giving us a like, subscribing, and hitting the notification icon, as it really helps our channel. And as always, be good to you.